Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to something a little bit different here. I'm Josh Meek, the Uber Geek, and we are going to be messing around today in VCV Rack, which is what you see here on the screen. VCV Rack is a tool, basically a software tool that emulates modular synthesis. So maybe that's something you've never heard of. Maybe it's something you're very familiar with. But something that I dabble with as a fun hobby. Certainly no expert at all. So if you're looking for like an amazing tutorial on VCV Rack, probably this isn't the place to go. We're just going to play around a little bit today, focus on some core concepts here at first, and then maybe build on it in the future. But modular synthesis, if you aren't aware, is basically a form of creating really, really customizable synthesizers. And they get very, very, very deep. But essentially, you have these little modules. You see some of them on the screen here that I've added a couple. And again, these are based on real things. So you see the rails here. These are what you would have in a modular synth enclosure, because this is where you're going to screw your modules into. What you see in the background here is where you plug the power into to power your actual modules. So we really are emulating physical hardware here. The couple of modules that I have plugged in so far, the first is this MIDI to CV controller. So all that's going to do, all you have to understand that's going to do, is basically take input from a USB keyboard that I have plugged into the computer and convert that into signal that our modular synth will understand. And then we have audio output. So all this is going to do is make it so that we can hear the music, the audio that gets generated from our modular synth. And this is it. Right now, you notice no sound. There's nothing coming out. The cool thing, and I guess also the hard thing about Eurorack and modular synth, is that you have to kind of build up the sound yourself. Everything that comes out of it is sort of kind of Legoed together with various different modules and different inputs and outputs. And it gets pretty crazy pretty fast here. So I want to start very small. And the first thing that I want to do is I just want to create a single synth voice that we can play using the keyboard that I have sitting here in front of me. So the very first thing we want to add is we want to find a voltage-controlled oscillator. So right now there's a ton of modules from a ton of different manufacturers and developers that are available in VCV Rack here, but I've got it limited down to just the VCV branded ones right now because they're usually pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and they're going to be easy things for us to get started with. So we're going to grab this VCO right here, which is a voltage-controlled oscillator. So that's going to drop that module right in for us. And if you have ever been around synthesizers, some of these terms might start making sense. The output of our voltage-controlled oscillator are different waves: a sine wave, a triangle wave, a sawtooth wave, and a square wave. Now, we can hear what this sounds like. And this is, again, where we get into the core of what modular synthesis is. To connect modules together, you're going to take the output from one module into the input of another module like this. Now, in real life, these are just cables that are connecting these two. Cables like you would have like for your headphones, for example. Now, we plug this into this mixer here. We're doing the mixer just so we can have a few more inputs kind of mixed together eventually, and we can adjust the level. Maybe we can add some more mixers and do that. But the in of our mixer, the out of the mixer is going to go into our audio, and as soon as we do that, you can hear this tone. So we'll maybe turn that down a little bit because that's kind of annoying. But that's what a saw wave sounds like, or a sine wave rather sounds like. That's that's good. Here's what a triangle wave sounds like, a little bit harsher. Here's a sawtooth. Yeah, so that was awful. And here's a square. Also pretty rough without any filtering or anything like that. So we'll go back to the sine. And again, keep it at a decent level that's not going to blow up our hearing. Now, it is an oscillator. We can set the frequency of it. So the frequency is more or less the note that's going to play. So up and down. You can get really low here. Get into some of that like rumble your chest area there. And obviously up to ear splitting level. So you notice there's no steps. We're just smoothly going across the whole frequency range. You might also notice that it's just playing all the time. So there's nothing that I can do to actually control this thing. It's just sort of going. And I can only set the notes by changing this knob, not actually playing the keyboard that I have in front of me. So first, we'll turn the volume down just so you can hear me talk. We're going to get the keyboard set up. So the keyboard right now is plugged in and over a MIDI channel. We have it hooked up here to this MIDI CV. So what this is going to do is it's going to convert my MIDI values into what are called CV values, or control voltage. The core of sort of interaction in a modular synth is voltages of various hertz, of various frequencies. And some voltages are going to be audio, like our oscillator here, and some voltages are going to be for controlling parameters. And that's what we're going to do now, is set up a CV for controlling various parameters. And the first one we're going to do is the volt per octave. So we're going to take a cable from here on the out, volt per octave out of our MIDI to CV, into the volt per octave in of our VCO. And now we'll turn it back up, and it's still playing all the time, but now when I press a key on the keyboard, I can actually change the notes of our oscillator. So I'm changing the frequency. And I'm getting something that sounds actually musical now, which is pretty cool. So I don't have to turn the knob anymore, and I'm actually getting steps based on the key that I'm playing. So volt per octave is kind of a standard for modular synth for how we convert, notes from a keyboard into control voltage that a module might recognize and allow you to play. So pretty cool. So the next step, now that we've got actual notes playing through our oscillator, is we got to figure out how to make it stop playing when I'm not pressing the darn keys on the keyboard. So that's what we'll do next. So I'm going to go ahead and unplug the noise so we don't hear it right off the bat. And we have to add some more modules to make this work. So the first thing we'll add is a VCA, a voltage controlled amplifier. So the VCA here is basically, it's pretty simple. It's an in and an out. It is a level, a percentage from 0 to 100, and then a CV input, so control voltage input, that lets us control what that level is. So we'll keep it pretty simple here, and we'll go from volt per octave into the VCO still. We'll go the wave out from the VCO now into the VCA instead, and then out from the VCA into our mixer, our audio output again. So we basically have recreated the setup that we had just a moment ago. We just have now the VCA in line. But it's exactly as it was before because our VCA is at 100%. So to see the VCA in action, we can actually just grab this and lower it down. And you can hear the sound get lower as we get closer to 0. And now that we're at 0, the sound is off. So I can adjust the level over here. Nothing comes out until I bring it back up. So that's cool, but obviously I don't want to sit here and just, have to crank this by hand every time I want a note to come out. So instead, we'll do another control voltage value from our keyboard and make this turn on the VCA when we're holding down a key. And the way that we do that is this gate. So a gate basically is a voltage that is, active while I am holding a key down. And as soon as I let that key up, the gate closes, essentially. So on when I'm holding a key down, and off when I release the key. Now, we'll talk about the concept of a gate versus a trigger maybe a little bit more later, but basically for right now, a gate is on the whole time I'm holding the key down, while a trigger would just fire once as kind of a quick hit when I press the key down and then would be done. So it triggers something versus a gate that lasts the duration of something. So we're going to deal with gates here, and our gate is going to go into the CV input of our VCA. And again, we'll turn the VCA up, but you see that it's not actually playing right now until I press a key on the keyboard. There we go. That actually is starting to sound like a little maybe toy piano that you might have had as a kid at that point. Super fun. So as I press a key, it turns on our VCA because of the input. So you can see it's going from no volts to 10 volts, turning it up. And when I let go, obviously, shuts it back down to 0. So that's cool. At that point, we can play little melodies. But you might be thinking, well, it doesn't sound good. And you would be right. We normally don't think of musical instruments and playing music in a way where basically every note just goes 0 to 100 and then straight back to 0. Just off, on, off. It's kind of harsh. It has a bit of a clip to it, even, you can hear. So we want to add something that's going to make it a bit more musical. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to add something called an envelope generator. Right here. The ADSR EG, which is quite confusingly named. So let's get it wired up, and then we'll talk through what it does. So first, instead of our gate going straight to our VCA, our gate is now going to go into our ADSR envelope generator. Go ahead and unplug that for a second. And then out of our envelope generator, it creates an envelope. Our envelope is going to come out here and go into our CV input. So now the difference is our MIDI is controlling our envelope generator, which is creating an envelope, which is using the envelope then to control our VCA. So we'll go out again from the VCA into the audio. Now, when I press a key on the keyboard, you'll hear something a little bit different. Now that sounds a lot better. And you can maybe figure out what's happening here. So the ADSR portion of the envelope generator stands for attack, decay, sustain, and release. And basically this handles how the note is played. It's not just on or off anymore. So instantly it sounds much more musical. And we can adjust it from there. So the attack is basically how long it takes for the note to go from 0 to kind of max volume. So the attack right now is set somewhere around here. You can hear it. You can actually see it tracked as we go. So if we want it to take a lot longer to get up to max volume, kind of has that very pad sound to it. Or if you want something to be really fast and maybe a little bit more percussive or plucky, you can do something like that. So it's still not instant, which is important. Because if we bring it all the way down to instant, there's a difference than if we give it just a little bit of time to do an attack. Now, decay is how long when the decay starts as soon as you get up to max volume, And decay determines how long it takes to get to what we call the sustain level. Sustain is basically just the volume that it's going to play at while I'm holding the key down. So right now the sustain is at 50%. So you can see when I hold the key down, our envelope, you can see with the white dot, is at the sustain level now, and our VCA is at about 50%. Or not about, it's exact. Then I let go and it goes on. So your sustain can be at 100% if you want it to be. And then you just really have no decay. So we go from attack straight across over to sustain. Your sustain can also be super low. But I like about 50. It's kind of good for what we're trying to do. Really gives a lot of definition there. Let's maybe make the decay a little bit shorter here now. I like that. And finally, the release is how long you continue hearing the note after I let the key up. So when I hold this down, I let the key up, and it keeps going down the path until it gets down here to 0. So obviously a long release, that note's going to last for a long time. Sometimes that's exactly what you're looking for. Or maybe you want it to be a little bit snappier. But we'll keep it maybe somewhere in the middle. Maybe a little bit less than that. Maybe more. I like it. So the envelope that's generated is basically controlling our VCA here and handling it so we can play very musically. That's pretty neat. That is super fun. Now, that is the basis here. So again, we have stuff for input, stuff for output, but these three modules here, the VCO, the envelope generator, and the VCA, are the core of a subtractive synth voice. So if you hear subtractive synthesis, that's what we're talking about here. Basically, that the sound is here all the time. It's playing all the time. And in order to make it musical, you subtract from that sound to create different notes and different sounds and envelopes like we saw here. This is how you build a subtractive synthesizer. So super, super fun. Now, that's one thing that you can do with modular synth. You can hook a keyboard up to it like this. You can play it like normal and just have the sound coming straight out. But you can add so many more modules. So let's maybe grab some more here and see what else we can do. One thing you might be interested in is, let's add a scope. Let's actually see what some of these waves look like. That could be fun here. So in a scope, this is an oscilloscope. We're just going to take the output, from the VCA to the input of the mixer, and then the output of the mixer into the audio. So we're basically just putting the scope in line with our existing chain. And let's make this so we can actually see it. That seems pretty good. You can see our very pretty wave there. Let's look at what a different wave looks like. Maybe a triangle wave. Oh, interesting. So notice, this is much sharper. See the point on the wave? Versus the sine. Much smoother. So that's actually the sound that we're seeing there. Sawtooth has a very appropriate name. Looks like saw teeth. And finally, the square wave. pretty square. We'll go back to the sine. And you can actually see the envelope happening here too. Notice how it's actually getting larger. We go out of our sort of scope range here for a little bit for the attack, and then we kind of come back down. If we increase the attack, you see it gets bigger and then goes back. So you can really visualize what's happening just using voltage, which is very fun. All right. So that's the scope. Doesn't affect the sound at all, but it's nice to see what we're working with here. So we'll pair a scope up maybe and leave that in our output chain. Now let's add something, maybe a delay. Delay is always fun to play around with here. So the delay, again, we'll take the output from our VCA, so kind of the output chain of our voice, our synth voice that we have here, and we will put it in the in of the delay. And again, the, let's do the, I guess, wet output? Yeah, into the input of the scope. So a delay is going to delay our signal. I pressed the key once there, but you heard multiple hits. So you can hear as I'm playing different keys, we're still getting the delay from the previous one kind of fading out as I move on. That's pretty neat. We can change the time that this is kind of delaying, because you can see the light here is flashing. That's the rate at which the delays are happening, the kind of subsequent fallout. But if we increase this, it's a lot longer between delay. So you can hear. And if we go the other way, you can see it gets really fast. Feedback. Let's play with that. Kind of sounds like strange wind chimes at play here. Let's try tone. Not hearing too much going on with the tone. But that might be due to our mix here. So mix is the amount of modified versus unmodified signal that we're getting, basically. So if the mix is 0, I'm hearing no delay. And if the mix is 100%, I'm not hearing my original note. I'm only hearing delay. So maybe we're we're mostly concerned with those delay notes. We can increase the mix a little bit. Very cool. So that's an example of an effect. Delay is an effect. Let's see. Maybe we have another effect that we can add here. Do Do we have any other good effects that are part of the sort of bass? Delay we saw. Is this, that's an attenuverter. Kind of want just a nice reverb, which I'm not seeing. Yeah, that is not what we're looking for. Let's look for one outside of the realm here. Spring reverb. That could be pretty fun. Nice simple reverb here. I don't mind that. Let's try this one from Buffaco. So a spring reverb. Once again, we're going to go out in 1, and then I think we want the mix to go into our delay. So we'll play something. I want it to be wet. There we go. Let's turn that up even more. Neat. So reverb is that kind of sound like you are in a big room. It's really the best way to describe it. Oop, clipping a little bit there, a little loud. We can turn that down a little bit. So we've almost created this like sounds like we're playing a synthesizer in a church is really what we've created here. Not bad. Maybe let's try this other one too. Let's just see which one we prefer. So, again, we'll go out from the VCA, in, and out from here into our existing delay. And they don't need to be in line, but just for visual sake, we'll pull that up here. Wow, I turned that up. You can really tell. Sounds like you're hearing it maybe 3 rooms over in a large cathedral. Turning it down, we're back to our normal sound. Maybe somewhere in the middle here. About there. I turned the delay off so we could hear just the reverb. And again, no reverb. Just as a reminder, that's what we're working with. Again, now that sounds weird now that we're kind of back to it. So we'll put some reverb back in. That feels pretty good. Let's try drive out. Oh wow, really affects the sound of the reverb there. I like that. Let's bring in some of our delay again. Yeah, I like that reverb, I think, better than this one. So let's go ahead and delete that one. All right. So now we've got a nice little effects chain here. Reverb going into a delay. But I'm still, pressing these keys. Sounds coming out. But maybe we want to affect some of these these things that are going on. Maybe we want to do some things to our sound. So let's see. Yeah, let's maybe affect the delay time here. So one way we can do that is by adding what's called an LFO. So we'll go back to just the VCV modules because, again, they're very simple. We like simple here. And we will add this LFO. Now, an LFO is kind of similar to a VCO, voltage-controlled oscillator versus a low-frequency oscillator. The idea of an LFO, a low-frequency oscillator, is that it is cyclical. You can see with the light that's flashing. And you can use it for all sorts of stuff. So it does actually have a sound that goes out. So if we want to take the sine wave out of it into our mixer, we'll be able to hear it, I think. There we go. So we can actually crank it up into kind of audio levels where you can hear it. So when we're up here in this range, it's basically just a VCO. It's oscillating so fast that it is producing noise, producing sound that we can actually hear. But really the core of an LFO is kind of down here in these ranges. I don't hear anything coming out at this point, and you can see that that's because it's oscillating so slowly. So what that is good for is not making direct sound, but instead is slowly changing something over time. So let's take the sine wave out of here, and let's put it into our maybe our mix for our delay. And we'll turn this up so it'll affect the mix completely. And now when we play, might be kind of hard to tell, but basically the mix is changing based on where the LFO is at. Let's try it into the time instead. And we'll turn that up. So now you can see that the LFO is going to be increasing and lowering the delay time as the LFO slowly oscillates up and down. You can hear that as I'm holding it down. So we're really kind of following that path of the LFO. Right now we're also only, I think, going on positive? Yeah, even crazier now. So this is basically going all the way negative voltage, all the way positive voltage, giving us these crazy sounds. Because again, the delay is going from very, very slow to near audio rate. Which again is pretty weird. Might not be a sound you're looking for, but it gives an example of how an LFO like this can be used to modulate parameters of something without me having to go over here and kind of fiddle the knob as it's happening. So let's maybe try to find something that's a little bit more practical. Maybe a nice filter would be good. Let's see what we have in terms of filters. So we can do the VCF, voltage controlled filter, just a plain old filter here, I guess. So a filter, let's again just plug this in. We'll go over here to dry. Maybe even let's turn off the reverb. Let's just hear exactly what the filter is going to sound like. So again, we'll go from here to the in, and we have a low pass and a high pass. So low pass first. So that's just a note. I'll just play a note. And then adjust the filter. You can kind of see what that's doing. So the low pass is kind of cutting off our lows, which is mostly where our sine wave is. And as we increase it, it's changing the shape of our wave, which is changing the tone of our sound. There we go. Similarly, with the high pass filter, I don't know if that's actually inverting the wave, I think. Yeah. Now when we go high, nothing's there. It's giving us this kind of weird invert shape. Resonance. We're going to get this crazy sub-ohm thing on the high pass filter. So that's just going to stay making noise because the resonance is so high. Let's go back to the low pass filter. So I was kind of liking what that's doing here. All right, let's adjust our envelope a bit. Let's kind of just go back to default. Yeah, something a bit simpler there. And again, I could play. You can hear when I adjust the cutoff, it sounds different as I'm playing, which is pretty cool. Let's adjust this here and maybe bring our filter up in line with our other effects. But I don't want to turn that knob myself. I want something like an LFO to do it. So we can do exactly that. So if I want to change the cutoff, I'm going to take this sine wave out into the CV in of our cutoff. So now, as my LFO is going to be making slow changes, my VCO is going to be changing. We're going to turn this all the way up, so that way it gets completely affected. So you can hear, that's very drastic. So again, we'll turn down the attenuverter a little bit. Maybe out there. Neat. Turn down the release a little bit. That's pretty cool. Instead of changing the cutoff, maybe we change the resonance. So you can hear. There it is. Or maybe the drive. So we'll have it affect the drive just a little bit, and then we'll maybe turn up the LFO. So it gives it a little bit of just like a vibrato sound, kind of like maybe a singer would have when they're singing. So nice and subtle, nothing too crazy, but it gives us a little bit of like gives us some variation without us having to actually like directly turn a knob. So let's bring the delay back in. Kind of crazy and haunting there with that filter. And let's bring the reverb back in. All right, that's fun. I can sit here and press these keys all day long, but that's what that is. Very cool. All right, let's see what else we want to add here. Continuing to build this sound up. So other stuff that is in the realm. This is interesting. A push button. We just have something happen when we push a button. That's kind of neat. Let's try that. Nice little simple one to close things out. Maybe let's see. Yeah, this is the button that we can push. And let's have it trigger something. Is there something here that we want it to trigger? Let's see. Maybe we can change something that's already existing for us. So let's say we will trigger a reset of our LFO. So now when I'm playing a note, so we turn this down. You can't really hear it, unfortunately, as much with what we are. Oh, but one thing we can re-trigger with our push button is our envelope. Let's give that a shot. That's cool. You can see as I press the button, it redoes the envelope from the beginning. Neat. So that's kind of the basis here, maybe as far as we'll get here on this first video of modular synthesis and kind of a beginner voice with an actual voice, the VCO, ADSR, and the VCA. So envelope, VCA, and VCO. Going into some effects, a reverb, a delay, a filter, and then using an LFO to modulate parameters that are on our various modules. So super beginner setup here that actually lets us start to play some things. So I think maybe next time we'll get into some different modules that are outside of the VCV default set, and maybe start building up some automation where we're actually playing things from a sequence instead of me pressing the keys on the keyboard. All right, so we'll wrap it up there. Thanks again for watching, and yeah, I hope this was fun. Thanks.